Hi, I'm Christy. Welcome to Weird and Witchy Shit, a place for, well, weird and witchy shit. Here we talk about everything from the magic of yoga, rituals, tarot, crystals, astrology, self-love, mental health, spiritual stuff, spooky things, and anything of the mystical variety. So if that sounds like the kind of shit you're into, then you're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the coven. We'll never forget, like everybody else who grows up, because we have the photographs. That's why they're so important. Whenever we start to forget or pretend we never knew, we can look at them and we'll remember. So today I've got a cute little story, and it's one that never fails to make me smile and one that I've loved since I was a very little girl. If you know me, I mean, obviously if you're listening or watching, you know that I fucking love anything to do with magic, and you'll know that I love anything to do with fairies, and I am forever and will forever be a true believer. I like this story so much, it just brings me so much joy, and it is the story of the Cottingley Fairies, or as I've called it, how two girls created a fairy tale. So our story takes place in the summer of 1917 in the village of Cottingley in West Yorkshire, England. Here is where 16-year-old Elsie lived with her mum and dad. Elsie's 9-year-old cousin Frances, along with her mother, moved from South Africa over to England to live with Elsie and her family for a while. This was really nice because the girls, despite their age difference, they got on really well and they became really close friends. So they would often spend their days down by a woodland area that was near the house. This is where Cottingley Beck flowed through, and a beck is a stream for those of you who don't know. The area was really nice, it was really like idyllic and just like a really like cute place to hang out. Like I would love to have something like that like pretty much right in my back garden. Like I think that would be so beautiful, because I think there must be fairies in a place like that. When I see somewhere like that with like really beautiful greenery and a beautiful beck flowing through, I know for a fact there's some fairies hanging around. But the girls would often come home from playing in the beck and they would be really dirty, their clothes would be bogging, their clothes would be soaked, and their parents would be not best pleased because it's 1917 and we can't just fucking fling things in the washing machine. So get it together, ladies. Stop coming home a fucking mess. You know the drill. So the girls' response to this was something along the lines of, we keep going down to play in the beck because that's where the fairies are and we want to see the fairies. And their parents are like, nice try, stop coming home dirty, we're not fucking believing stories of fairies. Can I just say, by the way, if you're watching the video version of this and not the podcast version, I am getting more and more slouched down on the couch. This is why I like to normally like record this when I'm sitting over the other side of my living room, where I can have like my chair to like sit me up for support in a more professional setting, I guess. But I'm literally watching myself in the viewfinder getting smaller and smaller and disappearing behind my laptop. So hopefully that's not distracting. The plus side is if you are joining on the video, we are joined by both my lovely dogs today. So yeah, their parents obviously didn't believe them. I mean, I say obviously, but if it was me, I would probably believe them. If someone came to me and they were like, I seen fairies down by the beck, I'd be like, fuck yes, let's go down right now, let's go and find those fucking fairies. So the girls obviously wanted to prove their parents wrong, and they wanted to prove that there really was fairies down by the beck. So they borrowed Elsie's dad's camera to try and capture them. The camera that he had was a mid-quarter plate camera. I don't know if that means anything to anyone. I don't know what that means, but you might. Anyway, so off they set down to Cottingley Beck with Elsie's dad's camera to capture the fairies and actually have real solid proof that what they were saying was true and that fairies were real. And remember, this is the year 1917, so there's no Photoshop. If I wanted to have a picture of me with a fairy, I could probably do so in just a couple of minutes, right from my phone, and make it look semi-half decent, semi-convincing, even though I have pretty minimal photo editing skills. It's just today, like, things like that are like really easily accessible, and there's like user-friendly apps and user-friendly platforms that are dead easy to work. So, but in 1917 things were not really the case. If something was on camera and you had a photo of it, that was pretty decent evidence that something existed. Elsie's dad, Arthur, he was quite into photography and he had really decent equipment. He even had his own dark room so that he could develop the pictures. Again, when it came to photography, there was a whole process when it came to developing a picture. Such different from the times now. So Arthur's in his dark room and he's developing all these pictures, and one picture starts to develop that he didn't take, and it caught him off guard because it was a picture of his niece Frances with what appeared to be 4 tiny winged little fairy type women dancing around in front of her. And behind Frances you can see Cottingley Beck flowing. This picture of Frances and the fairies became pretty famous, and I would say the most well known of the Cottingley fairies pictures. Still, even with this picture of Frances and the fairies, Arthur wasn't completely, well actually he wasn't convinced at all. He knew that his daughter Elsie, just like him, was quite a keen photographer, and he felt that her skills and knowledge of camera angles, lighting and such, and maybe the use of some little cardboard cutouts propped up would have allowed Elsie to produce this photograph. So a couple of months had passed by and the girls are just not letting the whole fairy thing drop. They're sticking to their story that the fairies are real. They're absolutely telling the truth. We promise you there are fairies down by Cottingley Beck. So once again, they borrow the camera and they actually manage to capture more photos. This photo was Elsie with a little gnome-like creature, and I think that this photo is my favourite because the little gnome is actually the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. I could literally die. His tiny little skinny spindly legs break my fucking heart. I would die for this gnome. I'm telling you that right now. I would lay it all on the line for this little gnome. Still, Arthur wasn't convinced. He still thought that it was some kind of like trickery with cardboard cutouts and camera skills. However, his wife Polly, she absolutely believed the girls. Like, she wholeheartedly 110% believed that these pictures were legitimate and that the fairies were absolutely real. So Polly, Elsie's mum, Frances's auntie, Arthur's wife, just so we're keeping on the same page. I know when it's me and there's a lot of names, I don't know what the fuck's happening. Polly was a member of the Theosophical Society, which from my understanding is a spiritual movement that believes that once we live our human lives and leave our human bodies, we are then reincarnated in accordance to karma, and that humankind as a whole is going through cycles of evolution to achieve the perfect physical state. So I wasn't entirely sure what the Theosophical Society was, so I did have to Google it. I kind of understand it as that we are still evolving, I guess. So we used to be monkeys, then we were like cavemen, and went through all these different cycles until what we are now over a period of thousands and thousands of years, and we will continue to evolve into something better. So like human being as we know it is not our final state. This cycle of evolution will continue to grow all the time. If you know more about the Theosophical Society than I do, please pop some information in the comments section of the YouTube video. I'm sure we would find that really interesting. Anyway, Polly took these photographs along with her to one of these Theosophical Society meetings, and this actually managed to get the photos displayed at one of their conferences a few months later. And at this display, the photos caught the eye of Edward Gardiner. He was one of the high up leaders of this society. Edward Gardiner believed these photos to be supernatural proof that metaphysical changes were happening and the next cycle of evolution was underway. His interest in the photos meant that the family actually gave him access to the original plate of the photo negatives, and he sent this plate and the photo negatives off to be examined by a photography expert who concluded that the photos were entirely genuine, unfaked photographs, stating that they were straightforward photographs of whatever the camera was facing at that time. So that's not to say that this photography expert believed that these were fairies or gnomes that were in front of the camera, just that the photograph hadn't been doctored in any way. These photos continue to grow in popularity, and they were actually featured in a spiritualist magazine called Light, and their feature in this magazine caught the attention of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who is the writer of Sherlock Holmes, and he's quite the lover of supernatural goings on himself. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle at the time had actually been writing an article for magazine The Strand, and his segment was on fairies, so he asked if he could feature the pictures of the girls and the fairies in his magazine article, to which the girls and the family said yes he could. So by 1920, Frances and her mum were no longer living in Cottingley with Elsie and her family, and they had actually moved to Scarborough, which is a different part of England. But they were invited to come back and stay at the Cottingley home over the summer because both Arthur Conan Doyle and Edward Gardiner wanted to see if the girls could capture more pictures of the fairies. Elsie and Frances says that if anyone else was around, that the fairies wouldn't come out, so everyone had to stay away while they went down to the beck to go and get the pictures. Sneaky girls. So off they went alone, where they had went a couple of years beforehand, and they actually managed to get 2 more pictures. There was Frances and the Leaping Fairy, which shows Frances looking bemused as a little fairy leaps right in front of her face. And then there is the fairy offering a posy of harebells to Elsie, which shows a fairy giving Elsie a teeny tiny bunch of little flowers. Very cute. And then a few days later, they took the 5th and final photo of the fairies in their sun bath, and this is the only picture that's not featuring either of the girls. This has 3 little fairies who appear to be just enjoying the sunshine in the long grass. So the photos received a pretty mixed response, as I'm sure you can imagine. Some people felt that the photos were clearly faked and that it was an embarrassment that people with such a high status as Arthur Conan Doyle were believing in such, what they thought, bullshit. Skeptics were very quick to point out that the fairies were very similar to the fairies found in nursery tales, and that they had very fashionable hairstyles, which I don't understand, because why would you think that a fairy wouldn't have fashionable hairstyles? You think that fairies don't have like hairdressers and shit? Fairy YouTube tutorials? I don't know. Other people, however, they seen the photos as a wonderful gift that proved the existence of fairies. the photos actually really created a strong divide between the believers and the non-believers. So it wasn't until 1983, 66 years after the original photo was taken, that Elsie and Francis admitted that the photos were, in fact, faked. They revealed that they had hand-drawn the fairies by copying them out of a book called Princess Mary's Gift Book, and they propped them up with hat pins and then they took the pictures. They both says that they were just too embarrassed to admit that they had faked the pictures, and I guess it just kind of like snowballed for them. How were they to know that it was going to grow into such a big thing? Like, how were they supposed to know that it was going to capture the attention of Arthur Conan Doyle? How were they going to know that people were going to want to feature it in magazines? I mean, I feel like it was just like what was like a little childish joke, and then it just got like a whole lot bigger than them, and I don't think there was any harm in what they done, really. Here is a quote from Francis. "It was just Elsie and I having a bit of fun. I can't understand to this day why they were taken in. They wanted to be taken in." However, although the girls did admit to having faked the photos, they both swore blind that they actually did see fairies. The photos were fake, but the fairies were true. Francis even went as far as saying that although the first 4 photos were faked, the 5th and final photo, fairies in their sunbath, was entirely genuine. And in 1986, Francis passed away, and in 1988, Elsie passed away, both believing in fairies and both having brought so much joy into the world with their fairy tale. So yeah, this story, I think it's super cute, and I just think it's wild how it grew so big and how it really did cause such a big divide in people. I feel like nowadays there would be absolutely no way at all that it would become so huge. Like, if a kid came to you with pictures of them and a fairy, you'd just be like, okay, that's nice. It's not as if it's going to get published in magazines and become like this really big, huge, massive, giant, how many more words, how many more synonyms for big can I find, thing. This was round about during the First World War and stuff when this was happening, so I guess maybe people just needed like a little beacon of hope, and maybe the fairy pictures gave that to them, that there was something unexpected and cool and bigger than us out there, like a whole different world that kind of gave people hope, and maybe people wanted to believe in fairy tales. It's like Francis says in the quote, people wanted to be taken in, and I definitely think that as well with this. I think that's part of the reason why I always say that I will 100% always believe in fairies. It's not because I have solid proof that fairies are real, it's because I want to believe in fairies. Like, I want to believe that magic exists and that the world's a nicer place than it sometimes seems on the outside. And I guess as well, it's like a lot to do with why people believe in God or any kind of bigger spiritual being. A lot of it isn't evidence-based or proof-based. It's just because they want to. Like, it gives joy and hope, and I don't see anything wrong with that. And another big part of the reason why I love it so much is because there is a movie called Fairytale, a true story, and it is based on this. The facts are all a little bit different. I've actually not seen it in such a long time, but I really want to go back and watch that movie, because that was one that I watched over and over and over and over and over again when I was a little girl. I think it came out in 1997, and I would highly recommend it if you just want something to warm your little heart and get you believing in fairies. Well, that's all for today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Bye. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can get me on Instagram at Christie's_coven. That's KRISTYS_coven. You can also find me on YouTube at Christie's Coven, where I post a lot of free yoga classes and shit like that. And I'd love to have you join, because it's not a coven if it's just me. And until next time, Bye!